before the austerity measures, but particularly during the austerity measures, are not going far enough in this bill.
Thanks, Lascan. I'm delighted to have a brief opportunity to comment on the Social Welfare Pension Civil Registration Bill 2018. There are welcome features in the 2018 bill, Lascan, and of course they include increased maternity, adoptive and paternity benefits, the increase and proportionate increase in social protection payments, and the measures to address the Budget 2012 pension anomaly that my colleague has referred to. In my own pre-budget submission, of course, to Minister Paschal Donohoe, Minister, my submission, I entitled it "A Budget for All Our People." I did ask for at least a general rise of €7 a week, which your department, I think, costed for me at this sum of 485.94 million, nearly 500 million. And among other general increases, some of which I'll touch on just later. But it's regrettable, of course, the increases won't take effect until March. Households, of course, are under extreme pressure, as you well know, during the Christmas period and into the new year. And the March provision, as this year, I think, it's simply to push necessary exchequer expenditure into the future. With Sections 10 and 11, which extended provisions in the Act to ensure that care leavers receive the full rates of job seekers allowance and supplementary welfare allowance rather than the age-related reductions. That's very welcome. And Section 12, of course, sets out the domiciliary care allowance that will be paid for 3 months after the death of the child being cared for. And I again welcome the Minister's bringing this forward in this bill. The total budget, of course, 2019 package for your department, I think it was 20.5 billion, about 46%. Minister, of which is composed of the Social Insurance Fund. I notice our Budget Office gave us a brief note on it. It's 10.8 billion, isn't it, from in relation to 9.3 billion from the Social Insurance, 10.8 of actual additional government expenditure. But of course, the Department of Finance has rigorously suppressed social welfare spending in the 19 billion to 20 billion range over the past 8 years of austerity. And the expenditure ceiling, of course, you also had the savings of 50 million due to the increasing employment figures and less people being on the live register. So therefore, with the big surplus you had in the Social Insurance Fund, I mean, I think you could have been more expansive, Minister. There are many other issues that you could have addressed or paid back for longer periods, such as the 2012 people. So, you had more than enough money, I think, to have at least gone to €7 a week. And that's the reason I proposed that. I also called for the income disregard, of course, and I give you credit on this, for the one-parent family payment to be restored to €146, and you've brought it to €150. Again, that's noteworthy and creditable. And of course, recent research by ESRI and funded by our excellent Parliamentary Budget Office, the gender impact of Irish budgetary policy shows clearly that women were most adversely affected during the austerity budgets from 2008 to 2012, and some of those budgets, of course, you yourself supported, and indeed afterwards. But I welcome the increased focus, of course, on the worrying trend of the feminisation of poverty and homelessness. And of course, I'd like to have seen the Minister on Budget Day get up and read out an equality budget statement. That's what we called for on the Budget Oversight Committee, and it's perhaps something you could try and work for if we get to see another budget in this House, or if you have any other opportunity to do that, Minister. But the most vulnerable, of course, are always targeted, because obviously they're less likely to have the time, energy or money to stand up for themselves. But I spoke recently on the gender budgeting report produced by our Budget Committee, and I'll be awaiting your department's your social impact assessment for Budget 2019. I welcome also the increase in the qualified child payment, and hope it will have a positive impact on child poverty. As my colleague said, youth unemployment is still very concerning, Minister. I think we've over 14,000 under 26s on the weekly job seekers payment of €107.70, and over 2,000 in receipt of the €152 a week. And that's, again, given the resources, I think, at your disposal, I think you could have moved towards equalisation in this regard. I'm also disappointed to see the age-related discrimination continue here. And it is disturbing that I noticed, by the way, Minister, you've abandoned the Jobs Action Plan. You say you're coming down, you're coming forward with some new programme, but at least the Jobs Action Plan and we did have a sort of programme that we could measure off what the government was trying to achieve and what was being achieved over the last number of years. The increase in the National Training Fund, of course, from 0.8 to 0.9, it's welcome. I advocate, in fact, an increase to 1%, and obviously the importance of promoting apprenticeships in particular, and many more women apprentices. With regards to fuel poverty, I also proposed, I think, the weekly rate of fuel allowance, increasing it by €7 to 72 million, and extending the season by 4 weeks. So the 1 week is welcome, but again, I think you had additional resources to move more further on that. Section 9, of course, provides for the long-awaited and much debated the aggregate contributions method for state pension, the contributor calculations, which will address the anomaly from budget 2012. And I'm glad that at long last the pensioners, I think 2/3 of them, was it 2/3 or more, are women, that this huge anomaly is being addressed, the 70,000 pensioners concerned, and that they are at long last being written to, and that they will be hopefully entitled to a higher pension rate and get backdated to March 2018. Now, some of them have complained already that they can't see why it can be backdated to the period when they went on pension, Minister. But anyway, it's been rolled out, I understand, for everyone from 2020, and the old averaging approach will be replaced by this new approach. I welcome, of course, Section 20, whereby same-sex spouses and civil partners will have a right and entitlement to spousal pensions. And Section 4 of the bill, of course, provides for the new PAYE modernisation system that's coming into effect on 1st January 2019, real-time system, which does seem to offer, Minister, important advantages for workers and indeed for employers indeed as well, in order to ensure that, as the revenue says, that the right deductions are made at the right time, and they're deducted from the right employees, and they're paid by employers in particular. So that's a welcome development in that part of the Act. I welcome changes also in the Principal Act in Section 17 regarding the earnings disregard for disability allowance, blind person and certain supplements payable under supplementary welfare allowance, whereby the phrase of a rehabilitative nature is deleted, and employment generally will no longer be distinguished from employment of a rehabilitative nature. Now, there was a very disappointing I thought allocation, Minister, in the budget 2019 for the disability sector. And I note the criticism that the disability advocacy groups have had of your budget. And in your press release, remember, you talked about the 300,000, or you wrote about the 300,000 research funding for the cost of disability allowance. Now, we've been talking about the cost of disability allowance all during my career in this House, that the additional cost that people with disability necessarily have. Obviously, the fact that there seems to be a serious study, but I mean, is this not just a sop to Minister Finney McGrath, who failed to get the start of this programme this year, and who may be jettisoned by your government during or after the general election. But I know the Disability Federation costed the €20 a week at approximately 130 million. But again, it seems, with the resource available to you, that you could have begun this programme in some way this year. The other issue, of course, when the partial restorations following the austerity years, is that increased restorations are not paid on the end of March again. I think everybody has made that point. The final point, Minister, I think, is that, of course, the social protection system, it's a floor income to protect many citizens, and social transfers, of course, we know reduce the risk of poverty. The pre-budget briefing papers, of course, reported that in 2016 social transfers reduced the at-risk of poverty rates from nearly 34% to just over 16% in absolute terms, and represented a poverty reduction effect of 51%. And tasked the think tank for action and social change also did a lot of good work around this issue, showing quite clearly that social transfers have a very big positive impact on low-income families. But we still have a system in the social protection system whereby applicants for so many benefits and assistances that they have to jump through all these bureaucratic hoops. And therefore, I still think, Minister, it is time that we would look again at the concept of a basic income. In view of, I tried to bring here in a bill, I think a few years ago, the High Pay and Wealth Commission bill to ascertain levels of income and wealth at the higher end of society. And I heard my colleagues here, Deputy Collins and the Solidarity for Profit, entering into the same kind of territory. And really what we're talking about is dividing the pie. We're supposed to be the second wealthiest country per capita on the planet. I think after Luxembourg, the most recent, I think it's a World Bank figure. And again, perhaps looking at the whole concept of a basic income as of